Hey guys, Blake here with another video, and as you can see over my shoulder, I bought a freshwater stingray the other day. So let's jump straight into the video and learn all about what's involved keeping these cute little characters. So the other day while I was doing an aquarium store tour, which if you haven't seen, I'll put in a link to the card above, I was super stoked to find this little guy in one of the tanks, and it was at a price that I was pretty happy with, having done a little bit of research on these guys, which I certainly would recommend. So I decided to pull the trigger. Now there are a few important things that should be worth noting before deciding whether or not to go ahead and pick up a freshwater stingray, and that's what I'm going to run through today. Now this is my first ever stingray, so I'm by no means an expert on freshwater rays, but the reason I'm doing this video is because I found it really difficult to find quality information on these guys. So I found that I did a lot of scouring of the web and of YouTube to find information that I was happy with. So this video is a means of collating that information in a convenient place that is able to be referred back to during the decision-making process of whether or not to buy a freshwater stingray. So here we go, let's jump straight into it. The first thing that's important to know is that stingrays are going to get big. Pretty much the freshwater stingrays can come from, there's some in Australia, Asia, but most of the ones in the hobby come from South America. So we know roughly what the size is going to be. It's really difficult these days because a lot of stingrays have been hybridized, and so is this one here. This is a 50% Motoro and a 50% black diamond stingray. So you have to sort of take it with a grain of salt a little bit when you are told what the percentage or mixture is of your freshwater stingrays, because most of the time it's at a best guess. So typical breeds of stingrays that you're going to find are going to be hybrids of Motoros, Mantillas, black diamonds and Leopoldis. So that's commonly what's available, at least here in Australia. And all of these species get quite big. So for me, this tank is by no means a final tank. I've actually got the middle step of a tank that I've got outside of the fish room here ready to go. So it's a good idea to be prepared beforehand, because what we find so often in this stingray game is that people buy them as babies and expect to upgrade their tank later, but when it comes time to doing that, it comes at quite a cost, because you really want a fish tank that's at least 3 foot wide. Now these aren't often easy to come by, and sometimes you have to order them custom made, so you need to consider the capital costs that it's going to incur getting these guys an appropriately sized aquarium for when they grow. So yeah, basically you want to get at least a 3 foot wide tank, and pretty much in terms of width, for me personally I'm going to go with an 8x3 eventually, but I think your pretty much minimum is going to be 6x3x2, because another important consideration is not only the size that they demand just with how big they grow, but also the waste that they produce. As you can see over my shoulder here, stingrays are massive waste producers, so you need to have really good filtration. Once again, this isn't a really great example, but I have 4 sponge filters, an internal filter and a canister filter on this tank. Ideally I'd rather have 2 really large canister filters, or a sump even, but that is going to be something that's sort of down the track. As for now, I'm just trying to overfilter as much as I can, keep up really regular water changes, and also give this a good gravel vac. I'm actually just going to do that as soon as I finish this video today. What we know is that they are heavy ammonia producers and heavy physical waste producers. So you want to keep super clean fresh water in this tank, have as much filtration as you can get, and really be keeping up with those water changes for these guys, because they can be a little bit sensitive to ammonia presence in the aquarium. As freshwater stingrays are a member of the shark skates and ray family, sexing them is quite easy. Basically there's a difference between the sexual organs of the stingray, so it's just a matter of looking underneath. There's plenty of diagrams available online, and I'll put one up on the screen now so you can get an idea of what's different, but it's quite easy to tell the difference between males and females. This specimen here that I've purchased is a male. Typically they grow a lot smaller than females. Females are the gender in this species that are going to grow the largest. So for that reason I've decided to start off with a male, just because it's not going to get quite as large, but still definitely going to get quite sizable. In terms of the physical waste, this is partly due to freshwater stingrays being heavy protein consumers. So you want to consider that when you are deciding some tank mates for these guys. So they're super peaceful. You don't really have to worry too much about stingrays attacking other fish, except that if the fish are small enough for them to eat and they decide to have a nap at the bottom of the aquarium, a stingray might find this a good time to go and grind up that fish during the night. So you just want to keep sort of semi-peaceful fish that are going to be too large for the stingray to fit in its mouth. So as you can see here, I've got a small school of striped silver dollars and a Saratoga Leichhardi. So the theory behind this is we've got the stingray inhabiting the bottom level of the aquarium, the silver dollars in the mid-water, and the Saratoga as the top dwelling fish. So I've found this to be quite a good combo, and nobody's bothered anyone, so that's certainly helpful. You want to be really careful about housing these guys with bristlenose and other Plecostomus, because they can actually latch onto the discs of stingrays, so it's not generally a good idea to house them with common sort of catfish that we do utilise for cleaning of the glass and things like that. Stingrays are a fairly slow moving fish, and they like to hide and lay sort of semi-dormant, waiting to be able to trap an unknowing fish that's going to swim by. So yeah, it's not going to be a fish that's going to be able to outrun or be active enough to sort of fend off attackers. So I'd really recommend against keeping these guys with anything aggressive. They do, however, have a naturally inbuilt defense mechanism. They're named stingrays because they do in fact have a stinger. And this stinger is on their tail. So they have basically the tail piece and a small barb that points upwards, and it's basically made of a piece of cartilage. So they will periodically grow and shed these barbs. So for me, periodically I'm going to have to go through this sand and collect any barbs that have been shed out, because they do pose a bit of a danger to the ray and other fish that are going through the sand bed, just for accidental damage or impaling on the barbs that have been shed over time. In terms of the sand, you don't want to keep these guys on gravel or anything that's going to be sharp. Even for example like a coral sand or anything like that, that's going to have sharper bits of debris in it. That's a big no-no, because stingrays have a very sensitive underbelly, so you want to keep it on soft substrate. Basically pool filter sand or basically bare bottom is pretty much the limit for what you're going to want to keep these guys on. In terms of decoration, you want to keep lots of open swimming space for these guys, give them room to move. I do have a fair bit of driftwood in here, and that will soon come out as the stingray grows. And as you can see, even behind me right here, there's plenty of open areas where it can sort of swim under there and shelter itself. So that was the theory behind that. I've kept it off the substrate as much as possible, so that yeah, it can provide a means of shelter more so than anything else. The most difficult thing that people find with juvenile stingrays is actually getting them onto prepared foods. A lot of them don't eat pellets straight away, and it does take some form of training to get them to start to eat that. Luckily that's not the case for me, and I was sure to find that the stingray was actually eating pellets before I purchased it. So you might even be worth asking the store to show you that the stingray is going to eat pellets in the store before taking it home, because if people are trying to sell you things, then they might just say that something is eating something when in actual fact it's not. So overall, I've been stoked with picking up this awesome freshwater stingray. I found them to have a heap of personality. As you can see, he's not too fussed with me sitting right in front of the tank. Found them to have quite a good amount of personality. They're not going to be too hazardous around you, although you just have to be careful when you put your hands in the tank and that sort of thing. I think they offer a really great talking point, and there'll be plenty of interest generated amongst family members and stuff like that. And overall, I've been super happy so far with keeping this juvenile freshwater stingray. So I'm keen to see how it goes, experiment and learn as much as I can, and as soon as I do, I'll be sure to bring that to you. So if you have anything further that you'd like to add, please comment it down below. As I sort of said, I'm in the learning process of keeping these animals, and I'm really keen to absorb as much information as I can, especially for those of you amongst us that are quite experienced with these guys. So certainly let me know. If you like this video, please like, subscribe and all that fun stuff, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.